Hey guys, what's going on? Hey, this is a first because this is more like a trailer of what's to come in a particular vein of content on this channel. But I thought this would be helpful because we're going to navigate a new house that isn't like your typical house. So strap up, announcements coming soon.
Okay, doing it for two. I watch that head move side to side as I let this in into the room. You are on time, let's connect minds. Trying to get into a mood. We gon' be fine. Close up the blinds, no rush. Finish the food.
All right, welcome to the Scent Bubble. I am your host for the afternoon. Okay, let's dive right into it. Quick story time. My mom went on a women's retreat recently, and she was in Italy. And for those of you who don't know, in Italy, there are a lot of very prestigious fragrance houses all around the cities there. And there are some that are unique to places like Rome and things like that. And so I gave my mom kind of a hit list and said, hey, I have the convenience of my mom living fairly close to me. So we talk, we hang out. And so I said, hey, if you come across any of some of these goat fragrances, by chance, you know, because you'll probably bump into a perfumery, pick them up. You know, I was like, I don't care, you know, get something, you know, bring me back something. So anyways, she ran into this house that I believe is an Italy exclusive, but we'll look into it in a little bit, called Santa Maria Novella. And they have some pretty incredible packaging. Matter of fact, let me show you guys. So my mom got me a fragrance from the house, and I've got a grip of samples. So we're going to walk through a couple of selections and offerings from the house. And I want you to know the story about this because I believe stories build brands, especially in perfumery. Stories give you a lot of information about the history of how that house was introduced to perfumery, how long they've been in perfumery, how much they care about perfumery, what goes into their process and their craftsmanship. And all of that stuff builds interest and curiosity. And it also tells you if their line of work and their level of passion is something that you want to buy into. For the purposes of knowing you're getting a quality product or just a unique experience. So very much a somewhat Casa Marati style presentation with this booklet. It's almost like an old King James Bible. You know, it's got the slider. And I acquired a fragrance called Ambra, which is what we will be starting our review series on. And but before I go into this house, it's not just like every old house. You know, everybody has a story. And this has prompted me to go to each house and give it due diligence. Even stuff like Chanel, Dior, you know, Ferragamo. These houses all have heritage and story. And it needs to be talked about because it influences your purchase, your understanding of brands and how long they've been in it, the changes they've gone through, and it just adds to the experience of perfumery shopping. It's amazing that a lot of you guys have north of 20, 30, 40, 50 bottles in your collection and you know nothing about the hands that made them. We're just now starting to see people pop up and even care about houses like, you know, Day 3 and Imaginary Authors and Mancera and all that stuff. But really there's fragrance houses that date far back, like we're talking almost 1,000 years old. Perfumery has been in the game for a long time in various forms, and we're going to cover that today. So, long-winded, I know, but this is the bottom line. I have one bottle from this house, Ambra from Santa Maria Novella. And then I have a gang of samples from the house, I think an additional 5. And so I would like to spend this video talking about the house very briefly to give a teaser and a precursor to when I actually go through my reviews. That way you guys know about the house. And also that way I don't have to bring up a history lesson with every single review. We're going to drop this brief history / trailer to let you know. And then we will go back to reviewing the fragrances as planned. But hopefully you will look at this house differently in terms of how I describe the fragrances because they're much different than most houses. So real quick, let's just change screen here. I'm not going to review this fragrance yet, but this will be the first that we review since I have an actual bottle, and I will be spending about a week or two with this fragrance before we look into it. So I just asked ChatGPT, like, what's the history of this house? And I'm going to read a couple of quick notes. So basically, the roots of Santa Maria Novella trace back to the year 1221, when the Dominican friars of the Church and Monastery of Santa Maria Novella in Florence, Italy, set up an infirmary and began cultivating herbs and botanicals to prepare balms, medicines, and aromatic preparations. So a medicinal approach, an aromatic, fragrant approach, even things like using herbs and flowers to scent water for perfume's sake and for drinking sake, ailments, things like that. So it was a holistic approach to fragrance, healing, and, religious ritual. So over time, this activity expanded and they developed compound herbal remedies, floral waters, and aromatic tinctures for the monastery's own use. And later for the public, notably in 1533, when Catherine de Medici married Henry II of France, her Florentine perfumer, so there were perfumers in 1533, created a fragrance for her journey to the French court, later marked as Acqua della Regina. In 1612, a proper retail apothecary shop was established in Florence by this person, marking the first transformation from purely monastic infirmary to the public commercial enterprise. So it basically went from a in-house practice to, hey, we're offering products and services and things like that. Throughout the centuries, the brand survived the plague, social upheaval, industrial change, wars, and still stands. So this fragrance house has been around for around like 800 years. This is way different than Chanel, right? Which even Chanel has a very rich history in the game, I believe, in the 1900s, but we'll get to that at a later story. So there's a lot that ChatGPT covered with me since I have the pro version, but basically what you need to know is this house started basically in churches making herbal remedies, floral and herbal waters, tinctures, healing ailments, different things like that. And then perfumers of that time were introduced to those processes with their own perfuming processes. And then they cultivated products. And even today, they're not just a perfumery, but they're kind of this house that experiments and builds off of a book of remedies and aromatics and compounds that have been being experimented with for hundreds of years. And so their perfumery is oftentimes built off of the backbone of the history of various aromatics and things that they used from a religious standpoint and from a fragrance standpoint. So their scents are meant to preserve the past and to reimagine them in a new light with today's ingredients. And so I imagine the scent profiles are going to be much simpler, but even I imagine there's going to be a delicate beauty and nuance within the types of raw materials being used to create scents. So their ambers aren't going to smell like typical ambers. Their florals aren't going to smell like typical florals. And because of the deep, rich heritage of this house, their eau de parfum concentrations typically run around the $300 price point. I've did a little bit of digging and found that their 100 ml eau de colognes, which are often more closely related to what the scents actually smelled like back then, typically run for around $150 for 100 ml. And it's hard I don't think you'll ever find these fragrances discounted. It's very local. There are several Santa Maria Novella shops in Italy. To my knowledge, I think there's well over 4. You can even do a quick Google search on maps and find that out. But that's a brief kind of rundown on this house of Santa Maria Novella. It makes it very unique compared to other houses. It's a heritage house. It's a historical house. And a lot of the scent profiles you're going to get from there are going to be unique capturings from the past that are reimagined with today's ingredients and expertise. So with that being said, look forward to it. We're going to do our first review on the bottle that I actually own, which is called Ambra. And then we'll move on to the remaining 4 or 5 samples. And hopefully I put you guys onto a new house, or a house you may have heard of, but didn't necessarily know the story behind, because I know personally, I haven't heard anyone talk about this house that's American. So with that being said, look forward to the future content from this house. And I'm excited to do a deep dive and put you guys onto some new juice. Stay blessed.